Welcome back to the Momentous Sports podcast. I am your host, Kyle Israel, and today I am joined by Drew Weatherford, founding partner of Weatherford Capital and founder of Collegiate Athletic Solutions. Weatherford Capital, headquartered in Tampa, Florida, is one of Central Florida's largest private equity firms, managing just around $1.3 billion across various portfolio companies, including several that have reached billion-dollar valuations themselves. Most recently, Weatherford Capital was one of the groups involved in the Tampa Bay Rays transaction, so they are now part of the ownership group of their hometown team, and that further extends their reach into professional sports ownership and the overall activity that they are a part of in sports, both at the youth sports and collegiate athletics level. Drew serves on the boards of IMG Academy, the Zebra, Summit Broadband, and Eric's Investment Partners, to name a few, and has advised countless companies through his earlier firm, Strategos Group, which he exited prior to co-founding Weatherford Capital with his brothers. Beyond business, he's deeply involved in philanthropy and public service, serving on multiple state boards, founding the nonprofit On Bikes, which is super cool. If you're a Tampa native, I'm sure you've seen On Bikes and their initiative throughout the streets of Tampa. And Drew continues to give back through Florida State University, where he was the starting quarterback under legendary Coach Bobby Bowden, and now serves on the university's board of trustees and investment committee. Drew's journey from the field to finance is remarkable, and today we'll dive into his athletic experience and how that shaped his leadership and his vision for the future of collegiate athletics through his initiative, Add More Athletes, which we'll talk more about today on the show. With that, thank you for joining, and let's jump right in. Thank you for joining the Momentous Sports podcast. I think if we had the time, we could probably go 2 or 3 hours talking about college football, our experience there, and the work that we're both doing in the private equity space today, and then in sports as well. But we'll try to keep it a condensed version, a shortened version for the audience, so they can pay attention. But I wanted to get right into it. Can you give me just a little bit of background about yourself, maybe the early days of your life? I think your family dynamic is extremely interesting. Obviously, that's parlayed into your professional life with Weatherford Capital. But I think the audience would enjoy hearing more about how you grow up, how sports was really integral in your development, and then just the size and scale of your family generally. I think it's cool context.
Absolutely happy to do it, and happy to be on the podcast. I know we've known each other for a really long time, and have a lot of connectivity, through my brother Joe playing with you at UCF. So it is kind of crazy, full circle to now be grown and, investing in a lot of the same stuff. But I know you've heard some of these stories, but to say that my childhood was interesting is an understatement. I'm one of 9 kids. So that alone is quite unique. And on top of that, we were actually all homeschooled for the vast majority of our lives, which back in the day was really fringe. I mean, very, very fringe. Like I remember, our neighbors being like, what in the world is going on? I remember like the State Department coming to our house. I think it was like, Health and Human Services or whatever, like, why the hell aren't your kids in school? Because we'd work in the morning and we'd be done by, because the truth is you only get like 3 hours of like work done when you go to school, right? Between passing periods and disruptions in class, et cetera, et cetera. And so by and large, we'd get up, we'd crank, and then we'd be running around like maniacs, beating the hell out of each other, playing football, basketball, baseball. And, anyone in their right mind, it's like, what in the hell is going on? Like, this is negligent. These parents, what are they doing? So it was definitely interesting. I'm in the middle of the bunch, essentially. So there's 7 boys, 2 girls. The oldest is a girl. Then it's 3 boys. And it's Will, Sam, me. All 3 of us now work together. So we're kind of the oldest boys. And then it's a girl, my sister Grace, who's a great athlete as well. And then 4 more boys.
Wow.
Wow. And so Joe, who you played with at UCF, was number 6. So it's Grace. So I'm 4, Grace is 5, Joe's 6.
Got it.
And it was interesting. I mean, we were a really close knit family. All of us ended up going to high school because back in the day you couldn't be homeschooled and play in high school. That what has now been kind of dubbed as like the Tebow rule. My mom was really involved in as well. She didn't think it was right that you couldn't be homeschooled and play. And so when Will and Sam went to school, which was like late '90s, um, that wasn't allowed. So they actually
Got it.
started going to high school to play sports because they were good athletes. Um, and then as my mom got more and more tired, is the way I see it, we kind of went earlier and earlier. And just the logistics, like my brothers were going to high school, the middle school was right down the road, so we'd all just kind of like carpool. And I was the first one to actually go to middle school, in a public middle school, and
Mm.
and yeah, so up until that point, I attribute me becoming um, a great competitor. I would say we're good athletes. Like the Weatherfords are good athletes, maybe even really
Hmm.
good athletes, but we're not great. We're not freaks. We're not. We don't have 40-inch verts. We're not running 4.3s. But by God, we can compete, and it's
Yep.
because we had to against each other, right? My brothers
Sure.
were taking it easy on me when we were playing basketball in the front yard. Um,
Sure.
they weren't. So it was like a blood sport, no matter what we did. And you had to become tough. You had to stand up for yourself, and you had to learn how to compete at a young age. And I think that was, I think, what ultimately differentiated me from someone of like a similar athleticism. I was just a
Sure.
grinder, and I wanted it really bad.
Well, it was very, first of all, incredible background, very interesting story. I know you have a family of your own today that is very important to you. I can only imagine how many grandchildren are there for your
So my
parents?
dad has 21 grandkids.
Wow.
21 grandkids. And just to think, Kyle, like what that, the grandkids are one thing, but 9 kids all playing sports. They
Yeah.
had a game. My parents had a football game on Tuesday, on Thursday, on Friday, and on Saturday for like 20 years. Middle school was Tuesday, JV was Thursday,
Thursday.
varsity was Friday, and then like there's one of us playing in college or multiple of us playing in college for like 20 years. So it's
Incredible.
pretty wild. We all went to the same high school too, which is unique. We were all coached
Yes.
by the same coach,
Yep.
Coach John Benedetto, and I think there was 17 or 18 straight years with one of us on the varsity football team at our high school,
So
and
wild.
12 with one of us starting at quarterback.
That's
I
crazy.
started as a freshman. Joe started right after I left. Then Steven started as a freshman. So I think it might be 11 because I think Joe was a sophomore because he was a freshman when I was a senior. Yeah, so 11 straight years with one of us starting at quarterback.
Wild. That's wild. That's wild. And you had an incredible career at Land O'Lakes. You and Xavier Lee, who went to Florida State at the same time as you did, were two people that I tracked closely. Probably my father tracked even closer as we were going through my recruiting experience. And for the audience, indirectly, Drew impacted my life in a very, very meaningful way. I was fortunate to get an offer from Florida State to come in the next year as a
Mm-hmm.
gray shirt, and realized that with the success you had in high school with Xavier's success, that it was best that I go somewhere else, and that's how I ended up at UCF, um, which was an unpopular decision for me to choose that. If you had an offer from Florida State back in the day, it was like,
Yeah,
why are
yeah.
you going to UCF instead of Florida State? But it was very obvious that there was going to be significant competition, and you had what ultimately became a fantastic career, 3.5 plus minus year
Mm-hmm.
starter. Played for a legend in Bobby Bowden, and that's where I'd like to take the next question. He was an incredible human being. I got to spend a couple days with him on a recruiting visit. I'll never forget those days you spent 4 years of your life around him. I'm just curious what you learned from Coach Bowden, what you take with you today, some of the principles that he taught. He was a teacher
Yeah.
an evangelizer in addition to a coach. So I'm just curious, what have you brought with you?
Humility
Mm,
is
mm,
the when I think of coach, I think of someone who is obviously a very special, capable individual. Kind of a 1% of 1%, sort of type of
Sure.
individual and a legend, but so humble.
Mm,
Um, was very content with his life, was very content with what he did for a living, was very content from being kind of a poor kid from Alabama. He just like owned it. So we
mhm,
hear people throw around the word like authenticity all the time now. Like he was very, very himself, never tried to be
mm,
anybody different. Um, and I think that's what made him successful is
yeah,
he never lost who he was and what he was about and where he came from, and frankly, why he did what he did, which honestly wasn't to make a bunch of money, right? I mean,
yeah,
I think he was one of the first coaches to like have a, you know, multi-million-dollar deal, right?
got it.
But
Yeah,
things changed a lot, obviously, in coaching comp but he loved the kids. And honestly, I think he just saw it as a ministry as much as he did anything. I mean,
yeah.
he wore his faith on his sleeve because that's who he was. Somehow he got away with it. I think, bec- I think because he won,
Yeah,
frankly.
yeah, yeah,
Um, all this like, can you pray after the game or can you pray? Like he didn't care. We
sure.
prayed in the locker room all the time. We prayed before practice, after practice. He would talk to us about his faith unapologetically, and had a huge impact in me and on me and on everyone else too. But the impact for me actually started when I was young. I mean, when I was like 8, he came and spoke at a church here
Mm,
in the Tampa Bay area. We didn't attend our regular service to go listen to him. And that's really when I decided I wanted to go there. And
wow.
I told everybody. Talk about a good lesson. I literally, if I wouldn't have gone and played at Florida State, like I would have had hundreds of people be like, "You didn't accomplish what you said you wanted to do." That's how vocal I was
Sure.
about wanting to do it.
You really manifested that. Your career got off to a hot start, 3 full years of starting, and then you experienced some adversity.
Mm-hmm.
There's a coaching carousel in college football, unlike any other profession. There may be guys today getting more money in their buyouts than Coach Bowden made in his illustrious career. To be
I'll put
honest,
this in
it's crazy.
perspective. I'll put this in perspective. Our current coach's buyout is more than Coach Bowden made in his entire career,
Holy smokes! Wow,
and he coached for
that's
what 30. I forgot the official number.
a long time.
A long time.
A long time. That's insane. That's insane. But that last year for you and I have had some conversation here recently where that was a real challenge. And I'm always curious about, how, athletes are resilient and, how they transition out of sport into the next phase of life. I think arguably from a professional perspective, you've done that as well as anybody. It is really hard to get the intro to really fit the time allotment because of just your involvement in so many boards and so many various philanthropic initiatives. But I'm curious, I don't think the career ended the way that you would have wanted it to on the field. What did
Certainly not.
can you give a little bit of context there of how that unfolded and then what you learned from that process, maybe about yourself and just, life in general?
It absolutely was not the ending that I anticipated. The dream was to play for Coach Bowden and then play in the league for a long time.
Yep.
And up until my senior year, everything looked like that was going to happen. As you know, I was a top, depending upon what ranking, right? Like a top 5-ish quarterback coming out of high school.
Yep.
Kind of came out of nowhere. Like Land O'Lakes was not like a powerhouse, but by any stretch. So kind of came out of nowhere, was a top 5 guy, was fortunate enough to go to the Elite 11. So I competed against, the best. You mentioned Xavier earlier. That was a interesting decision I had to make. I told you how long I was committed and wanted, that was my dream to play there. He committed before I did. So the number one
I didn't
quarterback,
know that.
the number one recruit in the country,
Mm-hmm.
who was bigger,
Done.
stronger, and faster than
Mm-hmm.
me, commits to the school that I've been dreaming about playing for since I was 8. So I had to make a decision on whether or not I was going to go try to compete and win the job or go somewhere else. And to be honest with you, I never even blinked. I was
That's
like,
awesome.
I was like, people would talk to me about are you sure this is a wise decision? The odds don't look very good. But I don't know. I felt almost like a calling on my life to go there and to play. And frankly, he was bigger, he was stronger, he was faster. And I just found a way, is the
Yeah.
truth. I just kind of tried to show up a little earlier. I tried to win at everything. I tried to show up a little earlier to every meeting. I stayed a little longer in the weight room, tried to watch more film, tried to run to every drill, tried to be the first guy in line every time. It wasn't I was never going to be the second string guy taking a rep sort of thing.
Sure.
We were battling. So it was well, who's going to take the first snap? I was going to make it a point to take the first snap, right? Those things matter.
They do matter. They do matter.
And those little things matter. And so it's kind of a combination of a bunch of different things helped me win the job. And to your point, had a really good, freshman year. We won the ACC championship. I think I was the redshirt freshman, or I was the freshman of the year or something like that. And was a Heisman hopeful, going into my sophomore year, which was kind of bizarre. And as you know, you've experienced it all kind of happened. So it's not oh my gosh, this is where I am. It just is, because it just kind of slowly evolves. And you just wake up one day and, Herb Street saying that I have a chance to win.
There you are.
I'm like, I actually did not read a lot of my own press or watch a lot of that, which I think was helpful. But to be honest, the rest of my career was pretty mediocre.
Interesting.
One thing beautiful about the position we play is there is not a more important position in all of sports, but there's also not a position in all of sports that relies on more people to do their job in order for you to do your job.
Yeah.
And part of that as the leader of the offense, is making sure that your guys are taking ownership and getting the job done. But sometimes you just have guys that can't get the job done.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't matter who you are, how good you are. If you don't have the right, supporting cast, you're not going to look very good. And the truth is, that's how it was my sophomore year. My junior year was a little bit better when Jimbo came in as our offensive coordinator. And then my senior year, I got hurt going into my senior year in spring football. And I think this is when it became really apparent to me that this was not amateur sports, that this was professional sports, because people were making decisions about their future and their profession, not necessarily that season, are we going to win more games this season with this guy or this guy? There was a lot of strategy and politics that went into it. And so what truthfully happened was Jimbo became the head coach in waiting after my junior year, going into my senior year. Part of that deal, Bobby had always made the quarterback decision, always, until that year. Until that year, he relinquished the authority as part of the deal to Jimbo to make the quarterback decision. I got hurt going into spring, and I get called into his office a week. I'm basically the team captain. I'm at ACC Media Day. I come back from ACC Media Day. I get called into his office the week of the game, maybe a week before the game, to tell me that I wasn't going to start.
Oh,
dude, and I was completely taken back. I don't want to say taken off guard, because I saw a little bit of what was happening. It was definitely clear there was an agenda. And the agenda was simple. It's hey, these wins are not on. And I love Coach Fisher. He's a great coach. He made a decision. I'm an adult. I get it.
Yeah.
He was doing what he thought was best for himself and the team long term. I do think he thought he was doing what was best for the team long term. But in my opinion, and most of the guys on the team, not making the best decision for winning games that year.
Got it.
And so by not starting me, by giving other younger guys on the team reps was one, those losses weren't on his head, they were on Bobby's. So like pressure was mounting and continuing to
Yep.
mount, which meant he was going to become the coach sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
And two, he was getting guys that got experience,
Yeah.
he didn't know if it was going to happen the next year or the next year. And so I didn't play my entire senior year, actually, Kyle. So like
Wow.
Christian Christian Ponder, good friend of mine, still a good friend of mine, threw 5 picks in the third game of the season. And I'm sitting as a redshirt senior on the bench. And the camera pans over to me on live television, like, hey, we're not exactly sure why Drew Weatherford's not, like maybe
Yeah.
he's still hurt from the spring, and which I wasn't.
Mm.
Didn't get in, never got in, basically the whole
Incredible.
season. Because ultimately, if I would have gone in and played well, like there would have been no turning back. Like he would have had to keep playing
Sure.
me, and I don't think he
Sure.
wanted to take that risk. In complete transparency, so it hurt really, really bad. I was a pretty confident, not cocky, but I was confident in myself and my ability. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a chance to play this season. Once I do, I'll never come off the field. I didn't get that chance.
Wow.
And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to end up going to the combine, playing really well. I'll end up getting drafted, really late. But then I'll do what I did here. I'll go beat somebody out like I beat Xavier out here. Didn't get invited to the combine.
Mm. Mm.
And I think the reason why was like there was no advocacy and no explanation of what actually happened.
Sure.
Like why I
Sure.
didn't play. The guy who did play was obviously good enough to play in the league 2 years later, but he wasn't good enough to play in the league his sophomore year. So it's
Right.
like as a GM and a scout, how do you go try to convince people to draft Drew Weatherford when he didn't play his senior year and he doesn't have any
It's hard.
coaches saying, hey, this guy's good enough. He's a great locker room guy. He's a hard worker. It was just weird, and everyone was
Yeah.
in a weird position. I don't think it was malicious. It was just the coaches found themselves in a situation where they couldn't really advocate. So I unsigned free agent in Chicago, went to camp, maybe played the best football of my life.
Really.
I think I had a good friend of mine, John Glennon, ended up being the
Yeah.
quarterback there, and he went back and watched film.
Virginia Tech, right?
Virginia Tech. No, he's NC State.
NC
The
State.
other Glenn,
That's right.
his brother, Sean, was VT, so he was my year. So I was buddies
Got
with
it.
Sean, and then Mike came after at NC State, but he was the starting quarterback in Chicago. And we talked about this experience at one point over dinner. And he's like, I'm going to go try to find that film. And he found the film. And I think he told me I was like, in live, I was like 19 for 21 or something.
That's a good day.
Like I just
Wow.
like balled out, and I knew I was going to stick, and I just didn't. Then I went to New Orleans as an unsigned free agent for their kind of mini camp. Didn't stick. And then to be honest, I really felt a combination of things. One, I was really bitter. I felt like the game had been kind of taken from me. And I also felt like I was gripping the club a little too tight. Like I wanted it so bad that in hindsight, I don't know that it would have been good for me if I would have gone and played in the NFL, truthfully. Like as a
Wow.
person, I don't know that I would be the best version of myself if I was successful in achieving the dream that I had as a kid. As hard as it is to say that, I think there's some truth to it.
That's very interesting. And I appreciate you being vulnerable there and just giving the entire perspective and how that felt in real time. And that transition can be extremely challenging. We see that with athletes that are transitioning or individuals just transitioning out of anything in their life that so much of their identity is tied to moving on to the next phase has been something that I've continued to explore the last 7 or 8 years, and wanting to help and add value wherever I can. With that being said, you've parlayed that into the start of an incredible professional career. Obviously, today, you're a partner at Weatherford Capital. the name says it all. But give me a little bit of context. You end up you finish playing football and kind of make that decision to put the cleats away, and then I believe you got active at Florida State pretty quickly or
Did.
very soon thereafter to some extent. And you guys have parlayed that into establishing Weatherford, have been incredible, one of the largest private equity firms in Central Florida, if not the largest in Central Florida. But what was the career journey like professionally after you stopped playing, and how did that lead you to Weatherford?
So to your point, I thought I was going to be playing. I was a business major. I always did well in school. I always knew I'd have a life after football, but I was very focused on playing at the next level. And so when it didn't happen, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't come from any money, right? So
Yeah.
I had to go get a job to pay my bills. I took a job at Florida State in the boosters. So I basically helped them kind of like stand up an office in South Florida. So I just raised money for the athletic department, which was a really great transition. Honestly, I knew it wasn't something that I wanted to do for a long time. But while I was reevaluating what I was passionate about outside of football, it was a great way to get back to the university that I loved, meet a lot of great business people that went to FSU, alumni. But after about a year and a half, I realized that it wasn't, something I wanted to do long term. And so I came back to Tampa from Fort Lauderdale and started a strategy consulting firm. I built that for 5 years and then sold out of it to join my brother, Will, and Sam in starting Weatherford Capital in 2015.
Okay.
And the strategy consulting firm I had was frankly what we had built here is what we were trying to build there. And I just made a simple decision, which was like, hey, I'd rather do this with, two guys that I used to sleep in the same room, It was like Sam on the top bunk, Will on the bottom bunk, and I was on the trundle. So it was like, hey, I know these guys. I trust these guys. We complement each other. I had my background. Will had his political background. He was the Speaker of the House of Florida, and Sam was running a family office overseas for like 10 years. And so the stars aligned, and I really feel like kind of the Lord orchestrated a pretty cool partnership between us three. And we started like most people in this space as an independent sponsor. So we did not have a committed fund out of the gate. We were smart enough, or I should say Sam was smart enough to know, like, don't go raise a $50 million fund, right?
Yeah.
Do deals, right? Go build a track record, go get a few exits, earn your investors' trust, and then, raise a fund. And so now we're about a $1.3 billion AUM shop, so not massive. But we're technically on like the third vintage, but second fund. So there's like 300 in SPVs. That's our legacy portfolio. Fund one's 350 and fund two is about the same size as fund one. And then we'll be back in market again and call it early 27. Back on the fundraising treadmill again.
Back on the grind. Back on the grind. Fundraising.
Right.
It's probably really nice to be in the lull a little bit,
No
because
doubt.
it's fully involved, fully engaged. We at Momentous are in that at the moment, and it's tough. It's tough. It's a combat sport. It never ends. So kudos to you for that early success from a fundraising perspective, and you guys have been making waves. You were part of a large transaction recently in the Tampa area. We can get to that later, but I want to turn to collegiate athletics, the collegiate athletics that you and I did not participate in. I don't even know if you can use the articulation collegiate athletics for what it is today, but you guys partnered with RedBird here, I think a few years ago now, or maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, focused on the private equity side of collegiate athletics. I think providing debt to institutions and universities. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just curious, what was the impetus for that strategy, and what have you learned through that process about private equity moving into collegiate athletics? I'll just give an example of some of the things I've seen. I think Wake Forest announced this weekend that they have $250 million mixed use development on campus around
Mm.
their football stadium. That not necessarily mean that that's private equity, but it's an illustration of how universities are starting to think about leveraging the land that they have. I've seen deals come across my desk recently that are you can invest potentially into athletic departments. I think there's markets being made. You guys were early in the space on the debt side, but if you can kind of summarize what the RedBird partnership is, where your guys' focus is, and maybe just what you're seeing in the collegiate space generally right now as it relates to private capital and kind of that opening up.
Yeah, I mean, it really started out of necessity. Honestly, trying to think of creative solutions for my alma mater. So I'm on the board of trustees at Florida State. Um, we're obviously in the ACC, which generates about half of the media value as the Big Ten in the SEC. Um, and the ACC is also locked into a really long contract till 2036.
Mm.
And so when I first got on the board, myself and the chairman of the board, started spending a lot of time, energy, and effort on this topic and just kind of thinking through how relevant would Florida State be if they had this sort of delta, right,
Yeah,
for the next 15 years. Um, Especially in light of the fact that, like, you were, when I got on the board, like NIL already existed. So like bigger schools that had, wealthier alumni were building war chests that we were, I would say we were respectfully competitive, but we weren't Ohio State. We weren't Michigan.
sure. Or
Uh,
Texas Tech.
or Texas Tech or Texas, right? There are just some schools that have deeper pockets from an alumni standpoint. But then that compounded with, they're also generating a lot more revenue than us on the media side. If you fast forward and if the House case actually happens and you can start actually, you have to, basically a $20 million bill if you want to remain competitive was
Yep.
coming from the pike. We're like, man, this does not look good for us. So we started thinking about what are the types of financial instruments that could work at the collegiate level. And obviously all the, there's equity, very complicated, especially at the university level. Conference level
Sure.
is usually a little cleaner. And I do think that that's likely to happen here in the not too distant future with one of the big conferences, which we can chat about later. But at the school level, I think we're still many, many years away before like institutions actually carve out. I think it's
Sure.
really football that they would carve out and someone could actually buy an equity stake in it. I would love to believe after evaluating it, thinking about it from the context of a board member, that was kind of a road too far
Hmm.
at this instance. Debt
Sure.
is also something that you could do, but frankly, universities have really cheap cost of capital. They can go to
Mm.
the bond markets and get way cheaper debt than any private debt provider could provide.
Got it.
Debt also has some restrictions, right? Like there's got to be a hard asset, there's got to be a tangible like revenue stream that they're bonding against. But a lot of what these universities need were dollars for payroll, right?
Hmm.
Dollars to be able to buy out a coach, very stuff that you can't get debt to finance, right? So
Right.
there is a need for flexible capital that would give universities the ability to invest that capital in whatever way they saw fit. Yes, do they go to the bond markets and get as much debt as they can to build a new stadium or to renovate the stadium or to build a football only facility? Yes, they should do that. Should they still keep raising donor dollars? 100%. So it's really just kind of part of the capital stack. So it's not
Got it.
equity, it's not debt. What it really is a royalty.
Got
I
it.
don't want to get into like too much of the specifics, but you're
Yeah.
essentially factoring very stable revenue streams. The most
Got it.
stable being the media distribution from the conference. But then you can look back over the last 5 or 10 years and it's like, well, how much revenue did you generate from ticket sales? Like it fluctuates based on wins and losses, but there's like a 10% band, right? I mean, you're going to sell within this margin of tickets every year. Same with concessions, same with apparel. The MMR stuff at the collegiate level is guaranteed. So like Learfield
Mm.
is guaranteeing to pay X amount. So we're not competing with Learfield. We're not competing with PlayFi, but we are leveraging, right, or factoring those revenue streams to basically try to
Right.
advance capital today when it's arguably more important to have capital today than it's ever been. And the
Hmm.
stakes are way higher too, right? Because if you don't win over the next 5 years, when the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Big 12 media deals come up, there's going to be another reshuffle of all of these schools. And you don't want to be on the outside looking in, you
Sure.
know? And
Sure.
so the stakes are really high. So I just felt like there was an opportunity to do what we thought about at FSU, and to try to scale that to other universities and to have conversations with conferences, et cetera. And we've been doing that, longer, I think, than anyone else. We're the only,
Yep.
so CAS is the only like dedicated fund for collegiate athletics. Like we've actually raised real capital that's ready to be deployed. And our investors
Got it.
know structure, and it's not, well, maybe it's going to be equity, maybe it's going to be debt, maybe it's going to be this. They know exactly how we're going to underwrite these things and feel comfortable with the risk adjusted returns.
I appreciate you laying that out and providing that context. It's a very interesting topic. Most people have no clue, if you're just an average college sports fan, that it's potentially going this way from a private equity perspective. The more astute likely do, but just generally they don't. So thank you
Yeah, and
for providing
there's several real
context.
deals, like the Big Ten deal, just so that
Big
you
Ten.
know and other people know,
Yeah.
is it's not done, but there's a high likelihood that that thing gets done.
Is that 2 billion?
It's like 2.4
Mm-hmm.
billion. That is an equity transaction. So I mean, it's been public now. It's CalPERS, or it's an entity within CalPERS, um, that is buying a 10% equity stake in the actual conference. Which then that money, that 2.4 billion, will be distributed to all of the programs. Um, and but to do that, they have to extend their grant of rights. So they are actually extending to, I want to say it's like 2042 or 46, something like that,
Hmm.
which big
Okay.
implications there. If all of a sudden the Big Ten is saying we're going to be in a media deal till then, not that they wouldn't add one or two more teams, but they're kind of locking in their base a little bit,
Got it.
and distributing hundreds of millions of dollars to all of their programs, which would be really helpful, and differentiate them. There's actually three tiers. I don't want to get into the specifics, but like there's three tiers. So like the top most valued programs get one amount. There's a mid tier, and then there's a lower tier. But everyone's getting $100 million plus,
Hmm.
from the deal.
It's going to be an interesting case study to watch that unfold. And I don't know that the Big Ten needs a leg up, but it'll continue to be a great advantage for them. I'm going to come back to the college space. I do want to, you obviously had a very unique education background growing up, but you also serve today on the board of IMG, which is arguably one of, if not the best sports academies in the world, really prolific more than anything else. What are you excited about for the future of IMG, kind of just generally today and the evolution of the organization? Um, and piggybacking that, how do you see, if at all, the education system evolving, in the years to come, in particular middle school, high school? There's a lot of families in the state of Florida, if you look at the stats, that are now homeschooling rather than sending their children to public schools. IMG fits this really kind of unique um, intersection of sport and education, and I guess boarding school to some extent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what are you excited about with IMG going forward? And then, how do you think, if at all, the education system is changing?
Yeah, well, I'll start with just IMG, which is, there is nothing like it in the entire world.
No.
It's a one of one asset. Um, it is the Disney World of youth sports. Like for kids like us, like I would have cut off my left arm because I would need my right one to throw to go to IMG Academy. That would have been like a
Yeah,
dream come true.
likewise.
Like, wake up every day and focus on your craft. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just an amazing. It's 600 acres. There's
Hmm.
1,600 students. There's 16 sports.
Wow.
We're on the verge of having 16 sports, everything from football, basketball. We just added wrestling. We have softball. We just added volleyball. Um, and of all levels, there are, call it 20% of the kids that are like professional type athletes.
Yeah.
But there's also the other 80, which parents wisely see it as an opportunity for their student to differentiate themselves. One, their son or daughter loves sports. So they're
Hmm.
sending them somewhere to do something they love, but they also realize in college admissions, it really helps to be at a boarding school and to show that you're willing to be so dedicated to something. So I think 85 to 90% of their students actually end up on a college roster. So pretty incredible.
Wow.
Um, Whereas it's like 5% at lower than 5% at a regular high school. So
Yep.
pretty incredible results. But that's at the top of the value chain. I do believe that we're going to see the proliferation of sports academies. People have wanted to do sports academies for a long time, but it's really hard. Um, for a lot of reasons, it's way more operational intensive than you would think. But the hardest thing
Hmm.
about it is like running a school is not easy. It takes very, very unique skill sets to have administrators and to have teachers and to have like the pedagogy of like all of that and all these coaches, for example. I think over the last 50 years love the idea of starting a sports academy. What's happening now is technology is ubiquitous a little bit, right? Like there are
Right.
really good digital technology platforms which is now unlocking the ability to run a school. And
Hmm.
so, because of that, you're starting to see a lot of sports academies pop up. Some of them are sports specific, like Nadal's Tennis Academy.
Hmm.
There's Spire. There's some others here that are focused on a few sports. And so, IMG will always be up here, and it's going to take someone $1 billion in 20 years to ever catch them, to be completely honest. But that
Sure.
doesn't mean there can't be other winners in the space. So I do think you will start to see, IMG Light, right? That's real brick and mortar schools that are trying to like heavily focus on athletics. I think you'll also see like these micro schools that are like quasi homeschool, like, hey, you go to school for 3 hours,
Yeah.
then you have the rest of the day, right?
Yeah.
Um, and actually IMG has some digital products that could actually help some of these schools when it comes to like sports nutrition, sports psychology, so we've created a digital asset so we can take advantage of these opportunities. And then I think we're starting to see actual clubs. So like youth clubs saying, wait a second, I have 500 kids or 1,000 kids on my roster, right? Across all these teams. What if I provided an option, right? And a digital schooling option. And incorporate training and all that kind of stuff where, hey, you go to school, there's a digital curriculum, you show up early to practice, you get your training in, then you practice, and it's kind of all run through the actual kind of club
Sure.
starting to happen. And so I'm really excited about what's going to happen in both education and the integration of sport. Because, like I said at the beginning, it takes 3 hours to do the amount of work that you actually need to do in school for really
Yeah.
disciplined and for the right families and the right kids. They can sit down for 3 hours, crank, and then they have an additional 4 hours that they otherwise would be at school that they can focus on not necessarily one sport, but maybe they get a golf lesson, get a piano lesson, learn another language. There's a lot that you can do with that extra 4 hours of time.
Yeah.
And there's also policies that are helping this with like education savings accounts. So now in the state of Florida, you used to have to be low income or in a bad school district to qualify. But now, if you don't go to the public school, you get an $8,000 check per kid.
Wow. I
to
didn't know that.
do whatever you want with it. So you can homeschool your kid. You can use that credit to go to a private school. Um, so there's real dollars that are
Wow.
accessible, not just in Florida. I think there's 20 states that have some form of it, and that'll continue to grow. So there are policies putting money, real money, into parents' hands and letting them decide what they want to do with it. And that's naturally going to create more parents that want to do this.
Yeah, it's interesting because you had such a hybrid, right? You were homeschooled, and you went into middle school and high school. I'm curious, I guess at the time you had no other option to play sports,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
had you had the option just to go to school like Tim, our partner Tebow did with Jacksonville Nice, um, do you think that's the option you would have chosen? Are you glad you had the hybrid model where you got that?
Oh,
Because I always think
yeah.
like super
I
basic,
would
like
not have loved being homeschool my whole
okay,
life. Like that's just, but there are kids that are wired that way.
yeah,
Um, we have 3 kids. We have 4 kids. 3 of them are in like a micro school. So they go to school from, I think it's 9 to 12:30. But
okay,
then it's like they have the whole rest of the day to do whatever they want. Will they
yeah,
stay in that environment all the way through high school? I think it's unlikely. Like I had a
yeah,
great middle school and high school experience. I would like them to have something similar. But if one of them is, or all of them are so maniacal about what they want to do, and they want to spend 3 hours working on whatever it is that they're excited about, and they want to do it, then I would be open to it. So I think you'll see a lot of individual sport kids like golfers, tennis players, runners, um, a lot of them, gymnasts, they're all home. Most of these people, like the best ones, are homeschooled. I
yeah.
think
They almost have to be.
the team sport is a little harder to replicate, obviously, if you're homeschooled. And so it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But there will be more kids that are athletes that are homeschooled moving forward than there has ever been in the past. And that will grow. I
Certainly,
think it's great.
certainly something to continue to follow. But I think just very, very interesting with how that's unfolding in real time these days, especially for young athletes trying to kind of make those decisions for parents trying to figure out what to do. I want to pivot here, come back to collegiate athletics. This is a topic that you've been super active around recently, initiative that you've been driving. There's been a number of publications that you've been a part of talking about this, and I'll just use kind of the headline: "One for the few, one for the many." Why don't we dive into that? Can you give me kind of the high level talking points here of what this initiative is, why you're passionate about it, when did it become salient, and what are you looking to do?
So the initiative is actually called Add More Athletes.
Got it.
It originated really from myself and the CEO at IMG. Um, because of the unique seats that we were in, it was kind of um, our worlds kind of collide as we started having conversations. I had this like deep, intimate view as a board member at a university, working in private capital at the collegiate space. He's literally running what is the equivalent of an athletic department. Is six,
Sure.
but it's like 3 times the size of any athletic department,
Yeah.
and they're wildly profitable. And guess what? They have no media, which is 40% of revenues in college, no ticket sales, no apparel, no like big sponsors, but yet
Mm,
through participation, they're a wildly profitable business. And it's
interesting.
like, well, wait a second, like they're doing functionally the same thing an athletic department was doing without, call it 75%, 80% of the revenue streams. Like, how are they so wildly profitable and athletic departments aren't? Just very few actually make any money. And
Yeah.
the answer was participation. And so as we started digging more into it, there's a few staggering stats. One is there's 8 million graduating seniors every year out of high school that play sports. 8 million. There's only 500,000 roster spots in all of college sports. All of
Wow.
college sports. So there are 7.5 million kids. I'm not naive enough to say all of them want to play college sports. A lot of them do, and there's literally not a place for them to go.
Yeah.
Or they have to pick, do I want to go to a great institution and have a great experience at FSU or UCF or UF? Or do I want to continue to chase this dream of playing baseball or soccer or whatever the sport may be. And so many of
Mm.
these kids want to play, but they're not going to sacrifice being able to go to big football games and being able to go to a better academic institution to go to that D2 school to play. So they just stop.
Yeah.
So with the supply and demand imbalance, and in light of what we know of IMG, in light of what we know of how athletic departments run, in light of what we know the demand is and how youth sports are run, we were like, well, wait a second. Why do you play youth sports? And a lot of these kids play competitive youth sports their whole lives. And then they get to college. And if you're not playing on an NCAA sanctioned team, you're basically not playing competitive sports anymore. Yes, there's intramurals. Yes, there's an elevated intramurals, which is like club, but there's no real coaching. There's no real accountability. So a lot of what you learn through sport gets lost. Like you go play games and you kind of like have fun, but it's just not as serious as what most of these athletes want, right? They've been playing travel baseball or travel soccer, like really competitive, getting coached up, having to be at practice on time, having to be accountable to their teammates. And then they show up and it's like, do you want to go play intramurals? They're like, screw that. Like, I'm a
Yeah.
real athlete. Like, I'm not going to play intramurals. And so
Yeah.
they just stop. And that's not good for, I think, one, their identity, right? And being an
Sure.
athlete, just like us, even though,
Yep.
we stopped playing later than them, that's hard to wrestle with.
Still the same.
Still the same dynamic. And so we're like, what if universities could actually profitably run club sports? What a
Hmm.
concept. They do it in youth. They have all the
Interesting.
infrastructure. Kids have shown and parents have shown a propensity to want to pay for it. So
Hmm.
the idea is that a Florida State University or a UCF, which I've talked to your president about this, President Cartwright, could basically not have to give scholarships to any of these kids. So there'd be full tuition paying. They'd meet all the criteria, right? We're picking from 7.5 million kids. There
Right.
are kids that meet whatever criteria that you want that want to play competitive. And all you'd really have to do is give them a little bit of access to facilities to elevate their experience. So do they work out in the weight room 5 days a week? No. Do they work out in the weight room like once a week or twice a week? Maybe. Do they actually have a real coach? Is there connectivity between that, like, call it super club team and the baseball coach or the soccer coach so that they can almost be running farm systems on their own campus,
Interesting.
right? Which would be valuable,
Yep.
especially in light of like the transfer portal. Like imagine each team on a campus actually having a non-NCAA sanctioned team that's just like a club that is not as intense. They're not, working 50-hour weeks, but maybe they're working 15 or 20-hour weeks. One of the assistants helps coach. They keep an eye on the players. They generate funds because they would pay participation fees. Where do those fees go? To the sport that it's in. So all of a sudden, soccer doesn't raise a lot of money every year. Neither does
Right.
cross country. Neither does volleyball. But all of a sudden, these students that want to be playing can basically be helping finance those non-revenue, which I hate that term, those non-revenue
Sure.
sports. So it kind of creates this ecosystem that's self-perpetuating and self-funding on a sport by sport basis. So that's the non-NCAA sanctioned way to do it. What we think the best solution for this long term is for the NCAA to just allow universities to compete in multiple levels in the same sport. So why
Hmm.
can't Florida State have a D1 softball team and a D2 softball team?
Interesting.
Like, it doesn't really make sense. The argument from the D2 schools is, oh, well, our D2 programs are going to go away. No, they're not. There's 7.5 million kids that want to play sports that aren't playing sports.
Yeah.
So you could have you could be a D2 school and have a D3 team,
Yeah.
right? Which helps drive
Yep.
enrollment. And so if you pan out and you think about it from the institution, if you're a president, it's like, okay, fully qualified, fully paying students that are good, disciplined students by and large, like athletes,
Hmm.
graduate at a higher rate, their retention metrics are better, they end up being more successful in industry and are more likely to give back because they have a connection to a school. So there's a lot of reasons to love student athletes, and they don't have to do this, but if schools wanted to, they could ask for them to pay to actually do it. They've been doing
Yep.
it their whole lives.
Yep.
The value proposition was there. So the whole idea is like, let's get more of these. Let's go from 500,000 to a million. Let's try to strive to have 1 million student athletes, which only means a 500,000 more leaders, business leaders, good citizens, people that understand the great things that we've learned through sport. Is the
Yep.
idea. So
I love that.
that's it in a nutshell.
I'm curious because you use the term. I'll use it now. The non-revenue sports. They are very much whether on the chopping block or overlooked now with the NIL, with pay for play. I'm curious, is there an element of solving for those sports that in many cases right now are on the chopping block in athletic departments? Is there a way to solve for that challenge, or is that just part of kind of understanding the dynamics of what's happening right now, and that's also a concern?
So I think yes, the answer is like they shouldn't be thinking about it's so counterintuitive in light of all the cost pressures. Their knee-jerk reaction is to cut sports, and they actually should be adding sports. It's kind of
Yeah,
crazy to say in this environment, but there is a very profitable way to add sports to every campus. Um, and the whole the reason why I hate non-revenue is that's not true. They all pay tuition. How many of the
got it.
baseball players are on full rides? Like 11 historically. Right.
Yeah,
So everyone else is full ride. How many of the soccer players are on a full ride? Very few. So most of the student athletes outside of football and basketball are not full scholarship anyways. So like just the way universities account, they don't account their tuition as revenue, which is kind of foolish. So there literally is no such thing as a non-revenue sport.
non-revenue sport.
They all generate revenue. Um, Although they don't necessarily make money because they're spending too much on overhead and facilities. That's the
Right.
university's fault. That's not the student athlete's fault. So we think there's
And I think there's
a real opportunity there. And one thing often overlooked too, there's a more cost-effective way to solve for Title IX. So if you could have a D2 softball team, wouldn't it be a lot more cost efficient to add a D2 softball team than go build a women's lacrosse facility?
yes,
Right?
100%. Use of facilities is a big part of this,
Yeah,
right?
utilization is like 10% of these facilities. So, anyways, there's a lot of merit to what we're discussing, but we also recognize like, this ecosystem is under a lot of duress right now. And this is going to take time, but I do think there are some bright spots. There are some universities that are actually already doing this, kind of bringing club sports underneath the athletic department and treating it as such. And we think more and more schools will do that in time.
I think it's parents are investing so much in their children's, youth sports careers, and then it's just like if they don't, earn a scholarship or make it on a roster. I love the idea that there's more than just do you make the squad or not. There's more options to go continue playing the game, and more than anything, like deriving the value personally that sports provides, right? And continuing to provide that
For
platform
sure.
for our future generations. I mean, it's part of the fabric of who we are as a country and the type of leaders we're able to produce. There's various ways to produce leaders, but sports is a key one. In the U.S. I think it's an incredible initiative. I'm excited to continue to hear more and see how that unfolds. And kudos to you. I know there's not, a finish line right away, but it takes a lot of effort and energy and time to build an initiative
For
to
sure.
get it to a place that's actionable and I think it's
We're
fantastic.
actually going to have an event next year that you should think about, and anyone listening should think about at IMG Academy. We
Okay.
don't have the date, but it'll be in the first half of next year with the idea of bringing a bunch of thought leaders in sports. Because really, when you add athletes, everyone wins. People that build facilities win. People that sell software win. People that sell apparel win. right?
Yeah.
It's a win-win proposition for everyone that's in the ecosystem, which is unique. But what's interesting is right now the only voice in DC when it comes to policy, for the most part, other than like the Aspen Institute, is
Hmm.
basically the Power Four conferences. Like they
Wow.
are driving all the policy in Washington, which yes, primarily is focused on college, but that has trickle down effects on 75 million students that play sports every year in this country. And there's not really a voice for those 75 million parents and student athletes. And so our hope is that like the initiative, the Add More Athletes initiative, can become a little bit of an advocacy operation, raise money, hire lobbyists, hire, polling, equip them to actually go to DC, and we could advocate for more dollars for recreational parks and fields. It could be something like this, which is Congress could say to the NCAA, you can't prohibit a university from having a D2 team. Right now, no one's looking out for the best interest because it's not organized. And so hopefully this can catalyze something to that effect, and we can all come together and just advocate and have a positive impact on the ecosystem.
I think that is an incredible vision. I'm really excited to see where that goes. Obviously, here in Germany, it's quite a different sports ecosystem, very academy based, no school sports. It's something that I'm trying to shrink the novelty around every day for my kids. But
Yeah.
there are models out there that exist, obviously, over here. A lot of them are sports specific, soccer being most prominent. But it is something that is a global kind of phenomenon in youth sports, and there's people doing it very different ways all across the globe. It'd be very interesting to see how that continues to unfold. All right, I'm going to get you out of here on one or two more questions. I appreciate the time. Um, Weatherford, I think, was leaning pretty heavy gov tech based on the background
Mm-hmm.
initially. Obviously, you struck the deal with RedBird, and have that initiative that we discussed. I think from our conversations, you're looking more into sports generally, from an investment perspective, but you all were a part of a recent large transaction, with Major League Baseball and the Tampa Bay Rays. We were very close to that at Momentous,
Mm-hmm.
in tracking how that went. And I think it's fantastic that you all, being from Tampa, are a part of that. I'm just curious more than anything, anecdotally, like what being a part of that organization means for you, for your brothers, for the family. I'm sure your parents were thrilled about that unfolding. Anything you want to share about that? I'm
Yeah,
open
it's a
open
dream
ears.
come true. I mean, as a professional, when my football career ended, owning a professional sports franchise is like one of those weird things that you can't possibly imagine happening in your lifetime. Um, and like most things in life, like your dreams come true, but not exactly the way you think they're going to. So if I would have
Yeah.
drawn it up, I would have owned the Bucks, right? Or a professional sports, NFL team. I'm more of a football
Yeah.
guy. Um, but and we're obviously not the controlling shareholder, right? So first of
Right.
all, we're really grateful to Patrick for viewing us as value-added investors and giving us an opportunity to come alongside them. We're super excited about the opportunity from an investment standpoint. We actually think, as much as any other franchise in any sport, there's a lot of upside here.
Yep. We
Um,
saw the same.
a lot of if things, a couple balls bounce the right way, like you can generate really great returns. But most importantly, we want to keep them here. So the reason why, having, 9 of us all grow up in this community, we've lived here for a long time, business, politics, philanthropy, we did our best to kind of assemble what we think to be kind of the best group of investors that care about this community and want to keep the Rays here. That's why we did the deal. Is like number one was
Mm.
to we believe that Tampa Bay deserves 3 franchises, um, especially when you think about the trajectory of this market in this state.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's goal number one. The truth is, it's going to be hard. It's going to be really, really hard. There's going to be, folks right down the road from us that are going to throw a lot of money um, at this franchise to help them build a stadium. And I think our community is just going to have to make a decision because there's other people that would like to utilize the capital that we're going to need to build a stadium. There's other civic projects. There's other professional teams here that would like some of those dollars, as you would imagine. And I think the Tampa Bay community is just going to have to decide, do we want the Rays or, is something else a bigger priority? Do we want to, fund the Bucks' new stadium or the renovations to Amalie? And I believe, and this is certainly how I feel, I think they're going to choose the Rays. I think that, especially if it's on this side of the bridge. So we'll see. There's a lot of uncertainty about where it's going to end up, but we're really hopeful that we can, honestly win the hearts and minds of the people in this community to want it, and for them to make it a point to talk to their local commissioners and city council members about how important it is to have this franchise, because we never know if we're going to get another one back, is the truth.
Right.
And I think that's also why our friends down the road are going to be really, really aggressive, because when's the next chance they're going to have to get a professional sports franchise? So we'll see how it all plays out, but we're hopeful.
I mean, it's. I think that the organization, and we know Patrick and your other partners involved, like, there's such an unbelievable stewardship responsibility of being a professional sports team owner. And so I think, I mean, more likely than anything else. And I see that context a lot over here in Europe, where these soccer clubs are like a religion. And if you're a partner or an owner, control or minority, you have an unbelievable responsibility. And so I think the Rays, with Patrick's leadership, with you all being a part of it, and the influence, connectivity, and what you've done for the Tampa Bay region just generally as a family, philanthropically, I think the organization is in great hands. We're really excited to see where it goes, where the projects go. I know there's a lot of conversation online around where's the stadium going to go? Is there going to be a mixed use component? How are the Tampa Bay Rowdies involved? How about the Tampa Bay Sun involved? It's going to be a lot of fun reading over the next couple of months.
A lot of rumors. We don't know yet. Is the truth. We don't know yet. It's going to take some time to find the right location. For all this to start about, but
it's exciting.
We're certainly excited to be a part of it.
Well, listen, Drew, I really appreciate it. I know I said this in the outset. My father is going to be so excited to watch this podcast. I appreciate your candor and your knowledge on these various topics, and kind of going under the hood with us. Please let us know if there's anything that we can do to continue to support you all. We certainly appreciate the friendship and the time today, and just generally thank you for joining the podcast today.
No doubt. I appreciate it, Kyle, and congratulations to you guys. I'm excited and to see where Momentous goes, and I'm confident that there's going to be ways for us to collaborate down the road. So congrats to all your success, and look forward to working together with you guys.
Another great episode today of the Momentous Sports Podcast. Thank you again to Drew Weatherford for joining us and providing a ton of insight on the various topics that we covered today. I want to thank you all, the listeners, for tuning in, whether that be on Spotify or on YouTube. We'd really appreciate it if you gave us a follow. You can find all of our socials down in the comments section below to get more information. Once again, thank you for joining today's show, and we'll see you next week.